Being here this morning, I'm joined with the Police Commissioner, Assistant Commissioner McKenna, Rabbi Castell, David Ossett from the Jewish Board of Deputies on what is obviously a shocking morning in Sydney's east as we respond to what we regard as a hate crime on the streets of Sydney, a violent act of destruction, clearly anti-Semitic, designed to strike fear into the community that lives in this part of Sydney. I want to make it clear that this is antithetical and completely opposite to the kind of community and society that we want in Australia in 2024. This violent act will be met with the full response from New South Wales Police. Of course, it will be completely and thoroughly investigated. New South Wales Police today will also announce that Operation Shelter will have operationally the same level of resources that were in place on October the 7th. This is a full response across New South Wales to ensure that the public feels safe at a time of heightened community tension. I want to make it clear that these are shocking crimes. Of course, we're concerned and worried about it, but we also need to put forward a very strong message to the Jewish community of New South Wales that 99% of Australians that live in this state are behind you. They're appalled by this behaviour. They are appalled by these crimes, and that they stand with the Jewish community of New South Wales. I can understand when you consider that New South Wales hosts the second highest per capita number of Holocaust survivors in the world after Israel, this would be particularly confronting and horrifying. And those communities migrated to Australia specifically and precisely to avoid this kind of hatred and division. And I want to make it clear that there is a comprehensive police response in relation to this shocking crime, that the community is with the Jewish community of New South Wales today, that it won't be tolerated, and that civic and civil society is completely appalled by these acts of violence. This is not simply just an act of vandalism on the streets of Sydney. We need to call it out for what it is. The sequence of events leading up to it, the graffiti that accompanied it, clearly identify that this is an attack on our community and the Jewish community in Sydney. It is anti-Semitic and it needs to be met with a full response from New South Wales Police and the New South Wales Government. And I'm going to hand over to the Police Commissioner.
Thank you, Premier. As has been said, police were called to an area in Woollahra about 1 a.m. this morning after reports of graffiti, anti-Semitic writings on walls and on footpaths. And what followed later was a car on fire. Two males who were disguised, were seen running from that location. We believe in their late teens, early 20s. A police response, a full response is underway and commenced immediately, with local, region and terrorism police being called out last night. There is still a very active crime scene investigation at that location in Woollahra, and police have been working around the clock to follow all leads. It will be an extensive investigation and will take time. Police will be door knocking and they'll be calling on any witnesses. At this stage, as I said, the perpetrators were disguised and we need public assistance to come forward and help identify those two people, and any information they have is welcome. Please call Crime Stoppers. As the Premier has said, we have returned Operation Shelter to its post-October 7 operational settings. That means there will be community engagement, prevention, response into all matters reported to us, but importantly engaging with the community. What happened last night is disgusting, and there's no place for hate of this nature in Sydney or anywhere in Australia. And we will be using all our resources to investigate this matter. Certainly, recently there had been a similar type of incident where those two offenders are currently before the court. The penalties they can expect, if convicted, are up to 10 years. These are serious matters, and we will investigate them and use the full extent of the laws available to us in New South Wales. I'll now hand over to Assistant Commissioner McKenna to talk in a little bit more detail about the current investigation and our response. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd just like to echo the Commissioner and the Premier's words that we will be thoroughly investigating this matter and any matters of this type going forward. We have increased our resources. There will be standalone resources through Operation Shelter to investigate these and any further type of offences going forward if they do occur. Thus far, the investigation is underway. We've got detectives on the ground following leads, and we will, like we did at the last attack at Woollahra, we will get to the bottom of this. We will bring people to justice. We do not believe that the two attacks are linked at this stage, however we are keeping an open mind. The offenders from the last attack obviously are still in custody. I should point out that the vehicle that was set on fire was not a residence vehicle. It was actually the vehicle that the offenders came in. So it's the graffiti itself, it's the anti-Semitic remarks that they've spray painted on those houses, on those footpaths that we are investigating. I'd like to say that to the community that we are there with you, we are by your side. We've worked very closely with our Jewish community. We are working hand in glove with them, with their security group, with their community members. And we would like to say, if you have any concerns, please call the police 24/7. We will be there. We can surge resources into these things at any given time, and that is what we will be doing, especially over the next few weeks, because we want people to not only be safe, but to feel safe. And we'll take any questions if you have them. Oh, sorry, David Ossip's now going to speak.
Good morning. My name's David Ossip and I'm President of the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies, which is the roof body of the Jewish community here in New South Wales. I'd like to begin by thanking the Premier, the Police Commissioner and other representatives of New South Wales Police for being with us today and for their extremely swift response to what we saw in Woollahra overnight. As a community, we are outraged, we are appalled and we are deeply saddened by what transpired in Woollahra in the early hours of this morning. This is the latest incident, the latest attack in a sustained campaign of intimidation, harassment and terror against the Jewish community. But the message to the perpetrators and all who wish ill on the Jewish community is that the Jewish community is strong, it is proud, it is united, and it will not be cowed by these attempts to intimidate and harass us. The individuals responsible must be swiftly apprehended and face the full force of law, and every single individual who spreads and incites hate and violence against the Jewish community here in New South Wales and Australia must likewise face the full face of the law.
Thank you very much, Premier. Thank you, Commissioner. As you heard, the Jewish community is going through a really hard time. It's been tough for us. People are feeling intimidated. People are feeling fear. But what has really shown through is the support and the togetherness, first of all, within our community, but also in the general community, where people reach out to Jewish people and say, how are you doing? What can we do to make your life easier? Whether it's somebody at work, whether it's at school, whether it's in housing, or somebody you'd bump in on the street. It's really important that we start to change how we interact with each other. And when we realize that somebody is going through a difficult time, we reach out, we try and make them feel more comfortable, supported, etc. And I think that's really important. And if that's the message as we lead into the Jewish festival of Hanukkah, which is a time of light, where we try and bring light to the world and make people's lives lighter, that's one of the ways we can do it, is being there for each other, reaching out and thinking about each other. Thank you.
And we're all happy to take questions.
Premier, are we in the midst of an anti-Semitism crisis here in NSW and across Australia, given these three attacks in quick succession?
Yeah, look, I am concerned about the rising attacks and outright anti-Semitism that you're seeing on the streets of Sydney and other capital cities across Australia. I don't think that there's any point in sugarcoating it or trying to downplay it. This isn't just a random act of destruction. This was specifically designed to, in my view, incite hate and intimidate the Jewish community in Sydney. So that's the first thing we need to do, be clear and unambiguous about the meaning of this crime. Secondly, we need to make sure that there's a comprehensive police response. The Police Commissioner has made it clear that operationally they'll return the resourcing that was in place on October the 7th. We're working very closely with the Jewish community about synagogues and places of worship, as well as Jewish house and other community facilities in Sydney, particularly in the run-up to Hanukkah. This is a heightened period. It'd be silly not to recognise that. Lastly, and perhaps as importantly, it's whilst there's terrible people in our community, and there's not much we can do about some people who have hate in their heart, it is important to note that most Australians, average Australians, whether they have the Jewish faith or not, are appalled by this and stand with the Jewish community today. And I don't want, and David and the leadership, as he's already said, extraordinarily resourceful, extraordinarily resilient community and strong, but they need to know that we've got their back during this period. And I want to make that absolutely clear. That's the message and the sentiment from civic society in New South Wales today.
Why are we seeing this sharp uptick in attacks, and are you fearful that this could continue?
Well, I can't promise it would end tomorrow. It would be irresponsible as Premier of New South Wales to promise an end to this. I think that there are actions that we can take today from a law enforcement approach as well as a civic society approach to condemn the attacks, to mitigate it in our community and do our best to stop it wherever it eventuates. But I'm not going to lie about it, there's some bad people that exist in our community. Yes. Yes, as I said earlier, I mean, we could have a longer discussion about why people have hate in their heart, where this intergenerational hatred and racism comes from, particularly directed at the Jewish community, this anti-Semitism, which I've spoken about before, becomes endemic and gets into the grain or the marrow of a community. We have to be vigilant about it, because when left unchecked, it's very hard to stop its widespread, ubiquitous use in our community. And that's why media conferences like this are so important, because civic society can stand and say unambiguously, we will not stand for anti-Semitism in any of its forms. People have a right to practice their religion, live in their community free of harassment and fear. And as I said earlier, as New South Wales and Australia is per capita the second highest population of Holocaust survivors in the world, those members of our community have every right to feel safe and at home in Australia in 2024. Yeah. Potentially. I mean, the police investigation is our number one priority, but as the Police Commissioner said, those who were arrested yesterday for those acts of hate crime on the streets of Woollahra 2 weeks ago will face a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. So the laws are serious, and I don't want anyone to believe that this will be simply treated as a wanton act of vandalism as if it was occurring on any streets. No, this is specific and targeted and warrants A, a comprehensive police investigation, and B, charges that reflect the seriousness of the crime.
Premier, while noting that we've reported on it, your response over the last year has been praised, and while also noting the police's strong, quick arrests after the last attack, members of the Jewish community, to me anyway, have always feared an escalation like this, given the simmering anti-Semitism, well-documented hate speech. Were attacks like these two we've seen, given all that we've seen over the last year, hate speech, anti-Semitism, were they not unfortunately inevitable, an escalation like this that we've seen over the last 2 weeks?
It's very difficult for me to know. I don't know. I mean, you know, if the question is, can we do more? I think the answer is yes. And I'm not closing the door to changes to the law. I mean, I've said this a few times, Australia doesn't have the free speech laws that are in place in America, and for one very important reason, because we have developed a multicultural community where it doesn't matter what your faith or your religion is, you must live side by side with your neighbour in peace. And if we need laws in place to protect what has been built over multiple decades and make sure that people feel safe in Australia, that's what we'll do. We cannot have a situation where we are importing conflicts around the world onto the streets of Sydney and saying, well, it's just inevitable because something happened on the other side of the world. That's not going to be the case in Australia. And frankly, the way we hold our community together can't rest on the worst actor, the baddest faith actor in our community acting up and then all of us turning a blind eye. Multiculturalism will not survive like that.
Premier, just on...
what can police do or what can the government do to prevent these
Yeah, look, a couple of things. Firstly, it's important to note that those that perpetuated the act several weeks ago were caught. They're facing very serious charges, and the police task force that was established moved quickly. Secondly, there is a full and comprehensive police response to these acts of these crimes over the last 24 hours. Lastly, those that commit these acts will be facing very serious charges. Now, I believe that that does act as a deterrent. Now, I'm not coming here and promising an end to anti-Semitic acts, hatred, violence in our community. It would be irresponsible of me to do it. But what I can say is that we are taking it very seriously. Those that are charged will face very serious penalties. People who were charged several weeks ago will face sentences of up to 10 years in prison. So these are not light offences, and they won't be treated as if it was a random act of vandalism.
Security in Woollahra and at other... Sorry, just the Premier.
Certainly the return of Operation Shelter to the post-October 7 settings means that there will be increased patrols, increased engagement with the community, a very high visible police presence. We're actually taking police and dedicating them to Operation Shelter, and they'll be tasked to engage with the community, patrol. So police will be out there. The community can expect to see officers that will come up and speak to people, come up and get a sense of how they're feeling and say that we are there, that we're all there. But this Operation Shelter uptick will certainly be about dedicating resources to increased HVP in areas of concern and engage members in all parts of community. There's a question about how do we prevent this, and it's going to take everyone. It's not a policing response. We need people, we need families to have discussions with their children, their young ones, with whole of community to say this is not on. It's not acceptable to use violence, damage property. If there's hate, then you can't express your hate by hurting other people and damaging property. That is not acceptable in Sydney, in New South Wales.
No, in which...
We believe it's stolen. It has been severely damaged by fire. So there's certainly a task ahead for our forensic officers to determine what the vehicle is, and any information we can get from the vehicle, we believe it's stolen.
And the house that was raided, do we believe this house was a random house, or was it targeting the residents inside? So we said there was a Christmas wreath.
As I understand, and I can ask Assistant Commissioner McKenna to talk to it in more detail, that there is no sense that there was particular homes targeted, that because of their faith, that other people live in that community and other people have been targeted.
Commissioner, when are you going to stop the rallies each week?
So I just answered it.
When are you going to stop them?
Commissioner, while noting the quick response to arrest those two alleged culprits in the first Woollahra incident, why wasn't Operation Shelter upticked immediately after that to prevent?
It has been, and certainly
after that first Woollahra.
It's been ongoing. So let me be clear: Operation Shelter has been ongoing since October 7, 23. So it's been ongoing for over 12 months now, and we scale resources accordingly. Certainly, the region commander from Central Metropolitan Region, who's here with me, has been increasing patrols. What I'm saying today is Operation Shelter, and those officers will be dedicated to Operation Shelter and will report to a commander in Operation Shelter. That's the only thing that's different in that respect. There will be dedicated resources. Officers across these commands, across all of Sydney, have been patrolling places of worship and other places. That has not stopped since October 7. But certainly putting a dedicated resource set aside is what we're doing today.
Commissioner, the Premier did say that we'll see resources escalated now in the same way that they were after October 7. Does that suggest we haven't seen similar resources since then to now?
So the only difference is we have been tasking officers that are attached to commands across Sydney and across New South Wales, and they've been reporting via Operation Shelter. What we're doing in addition to that is having officers onto a roster, working out of shelter in the Sydney Police Centre, who will dedicate all their time to shelter, as well as officers in commands on shift 24/7. They'll be responding and tasking, so it's an additional resource. So I'll come back to you.
Just...
Commissioner, the anti-Semitism
I'm not sure whether she's talking about New South Wales, but let me say, Operation Shelter has been running since October 23. 7th of October, post that day, our operation has been running, and we haven't, we've been committed to that ever since. Whatever complaint, inquiry has been made of police has been investigated. Every complaint of racism reported to police has or is under investigation. So I take this very seriously. We take it very seriously. I think that's the commitment today, is increasing patrols in a dedicated team out of shelter to, as I said, high visibility policing in areas of need, at times they need, and engaging with the community as well.
Commissioner, which areas and at what times of the day?
Oh, well, that's an operational matter, firstly.
Can you say which areas?
Oh, well,
more paroles?
Certainly, I'll say Sydney, because I don't want to say that it's limited to one area, and we will respond based on intelligence and other information and reports. Certainly, there has been an increase in reports of hatred in the eastern area of Sydney, in the southern eastern areas of Sydney, and we respond to that. We will respond to what's asked of us.
But we can expect to see...
I think I've just answered that question. We will certainly increase patrols based on where the community concern is.
And we can expect that outside of Jewish sites. We can expect to see that outside of Jewish sites.
Of course. But police respond to intelligence and concerns from their community, and we will engage with the community. The solution lies in the community to this, and we need to be talking to community about what else can be done and how we, stop this happening on our streets. That's our role in this, in a prevention space and an engagement space. We can respond time and time, but how do we prevent this? That's the question we need to be asking ourselves.